You can usually tell in less than 5 seconds. The coworker who wants the promotion a little too badly. The politician whose hunger for office is obvious before they've explained a single idea. The person who joins a volunteer group and somehow starts acting like they're already in charge. Most of us have the same reaction. We tense up. Not because ambition is automatically bad, but because visible hunger for power feels dangerous. Then something strange happens. Someone else gets introduced. They're competent, calm, maybe even reluctant. They don't seem particularly interested in being the leader. And somehow you trust them more almost instantly. Why? Why does confidence attract us, but obvious ambition often repels us?
Why does someone saying, "I should be in charge," trigger suspicion before they've actually done anything wrong? Most people assume it's culture. Maybe your parents taught you to be wary of arrogant people. Maybe movies trained you to root for the reluctant hero instead of the power-hungry villain. But that explanation has a problem. Those stories exist almost everywhere, across cultures that never met, across languages, across continents. It's as if humans everywhere are running the same unconscious test. And they are. Long before governments, long before elections, long before kings, presidents, or CEOs, your ancestors faced one of the oldest problems in human history.
How do you stop one person from taking over everyone else's life? Because here's something we rarely think about. A band of 30 hunter-gatherers had no police, no courts, no prisons, no constitution. If one person became a bully, there wasn't an institution waiting to fix the problem. Everyone had to live with that person, every single day. If they failed to stop someone from becoming domineering, the consequences weren't uncomfortable. They could be fatal. And that's why our ancestors developed one of the most remarkable political systems humans have ever created. Not a monarchy, not a democracy, something stranger. When most people picture prehistoric humans, they imagine a chief standing above everyone else.
The strongest man gives orders. Everyone obeys. It's a satisfying image. It also appears to be mostly wrong. For the vast majority of our species' history, leadership wasn't a permanent job. It was temporary, situational, fluid. Imagine arriving at a camp 100,000 years ago. You watch a hunting party leave. The best tracker naturally walks in front. Nobody voted, nobody appointed him. Nobody needed to. Later that evening, a disagreement breaks out over shared food. Now an older woman speaks. Everyone listens, not because she's the leader, because she's the wisest person for this problem. The next morning, heavy rain floods the camp. Someone else takes charge because they know where higher ground is.
Yesterday's leader is now following someone else's advice, and nobody finds that strange. Power wasn't something you owned. It was something the group lent you for exactly as long as you were useful. Then it disappeared. Imagine how different that is from today. A CEO stays CEO even when discussing topics they know nothing about. A king remained king whether the kingdom faced war, famine, or diplomacy. Modern leadership often comes attached to a title. Ancient leadership was attached to competence. The title expired as soon as the task did. At first glance, this almost sounds too idealistic. Surely someone tried to keep that authority. Surely the strongest hunter occasionally thought, why should I stop being in charge? Exactly.
And that's the real mystery. Hunter-gatherer societies weren't peaceful because nobody wanted power. There was always someone stronger, someone more charismatic, someone more persuasive. Evolution never stopped producing ambitious people. The real question is this: why didn't those ambitious people become kings?
That question fascinated anthropologist Christopher Boehm. After studying hunter-gatherer societies from around the world, he noticed something that appeared again and again and again. Every group contained people capable of dominating everyone else, but those people almost never succeeded. Not because they lacked strength, not because they lacked confidence, because everyone else stopped them. Boehm gave this pattern an unusual name: reverse dominance hierarchy. It sounds contradictory. We're used to dominance flowing downward, one person at the top, everyone else below. Reverse dominance flips that upside down. Instead of one powerful individual controlling the group, The group controls anyone trying to become too powerful.
Think about a flock of birds changing direction. There isn't a bird shouting commands. Each individual simply notices the same signal and responds. Hunter-gatherer bands often worked in remarkably similar ways. Nobody announced, "Let's stop this guy from becoming a chief." Nobody called a meeting. Nobody drafted rules. Yet somehow everyone reacted at almost the same moment. The instant someone began acting like they were above everyone else, the rest of the band quietly began treating them as an equal. Not later, immediately. It's one of the most extraordinary features of human psychology. Our ancestors didn't merely dislike tyrants, they built social instincts that prevented tyranny from growing in the first place.
And the first weapon they reached for wasn't violence, it wasn't exile, it wasn't even argument. It was something much more surprising: humiliation. Because sometimes the fastest way to stop someone climbing above everyone else is to make sure they never get too comfortable standing taller than the group. One of the clearest examples comes from the Kalahari Desert. An anthropologist named Richard Lee spent years living among the hoansi people. During one hunting trip, a young hunter returned to camp with an enormous animal, exactly the kind of kill that could feed dozens of people. Lee expected celebration. So did the hunter. Instead, the camp barely reacted. Someone looked at the animal and shrugged.
"That's a skinny one," another joked. They'd seen better. Someone else complained it hardly looked worth carrying home. If you didn't know what was happening, it would seem almost cruel. A man succeeds. His community tears him down. Why? Lee eventually asked the same question. The answer was astonishingly direct. When the young man kills much meat, they told him, he begins to think of himself as important. He starts imagining himself as a chief. Before long, he expects others to obey him. So, they explained, we always speak of his meat as worthless. This cools his heart and makes him gentle. Think about what they're saying. They aren't criticizing the meat. They're managing the ego attached to it. The joke isn't really for today's hunt.
It's for every hunt that comes afterward. Because status has a habit of hardening into authority if nobody pushes back. The hoansi understood something modern organizations constantly struggle with. Success changes people. Not always, not immediately, but often enough that every human society eventually has to answer the same question. What happens after someone starts believing their own success makes them more important than everyone else? Their answer wasn't punishment, it was pressure. Gentle, public, constant. Not enough to humiliate someone forever. Just enough to remind them that yesterday's success didn't buy tomorrow's obedience. And if that wasn't enough, the response became a little stronger.
People stopped rushing to do what the person suggested. Requests became suggestions. Suggestions became ignored. And notice how subtle this is. No dramatic confrontation, no declaration of rebellion. Just dozens of tiny acts of independence. One person chooses a different hunting route. Another quietly disagrees.
Someone else stops asking for advice. Power isn't usually lost all at once. It's lost one relationship at a time. If arrogance continued, the cost became social. People became less eager to share stories around the fire, less eager to cooperate, less eager to hunt together. In a world where survival depended on trust, isolation was a devastating consequence. And if even that failed, hunter-gatherers possessed one tool that many modern institutions don't. They could leave. Think about how extraordinary that is. A king can imprison his subjects. A corporation can make leaving expensive. A government controls territory. But a small nomadic band owns none of those things. Its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness.
People can simply walk away. Not dramatically, not all at once. A family leaves this week, another next month. Soon, the self-appointed leader discovers something unsettling. Authority only exists while other people keep granting it. Standing alone in an empty camp makes that lesson painfully clear. In the rarest and most extreme cases, anthropologists have documented hunter-gatherer groups collectively killing individuals who repeatedly became violently domineering and ignored every earlier attempt at correction. That wasn't justice in the modern legal sense, nor was it revenge.
It was treated as an absolute last resort, reserved for people who posed an ongoing threat to the group's survival.
These societies didn't jump to violence. They moved through increasingly costly ways of restoring equality. The goal wasn't to destroy powerful people. The goal was to prevent power from becoming permanent. And that's a distinction we still recognize today, even if we don't realize where it comes from. Watch what happens when someone in a friend group starts making decisions for everyone else. The invitations quietly slow down. People create another group chat. Plans happen without them. No one announces, "We've voted you out," yet somehow they've been voted out. Or think about a company founder. In the beginning, everyone admires their vision. Then success arrives, the company grows.
The founder starts believing every decision should be theirs alone. Eventually, the board removes them. Different century, different technology, the same ancient pattern. The coalition decides that one person's authority has outgrown the group's trust. Even online, echoes of this instinct appear everywhere. A celebrity becomes too self-important. An influencer starts acting untouchable. The internet delights in cutting them back down to size, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly. The modern world adds incentives, algorithms, outrage, and misinformation that our ancestors never faced. But underneath all that complexity lies something familiar. Humans remain deeply uncomfortable when they sense someone placing themselves above everyone else.
Which helps explain one of the oldest storytelling patterns ever created, the reluctant leader. The hero who doesn't seek the throne, the commander who has to be persuaded, the ordinary person who accepts responsibility only because everyone else asked them to. We see versions of this story across cultures and centuries because it satisfies an ancient trust test. Not, is this person powerful, but who wanted them to have power? If the answer is they did, our instincts become cautious. If the answer is the group chose them, we relax. Of course, reluctance alone doesn't guarantee wisdom. History contains plenty of reluctant leaders who failed, and eager leaders who governed remarkably well.
But our first impression isn't a careful historical analysis. It's an ancient risk assessment. For hundreds of thousands of years, choosing the wrong leader wasn't just embarrassing. It threatened everyone's survival.
So evolution favored minds that treated obvious status seeking with suspicion. Civilization changed far faster than evolution ever could. Agriculture allowed permanent settlements. Settlements grew into cities. Cities produced kingdoms, empires, corporations, and governments. Power became attached to offices instead of situations. Leadership became something people could keep. Our institutions changed. Our psychology didn't. That's why a manager who constantly reminds everyone they're the boss often loses respect instead of gaining it. Why people instinctively admire leaders who appear grounded. Why arrogance feels different from confidence.
And why someone who seems desperate for authority can make us uneasy before they've made a single decision. Your ancestors spent thousands of generations learning one difficult lesson. Power should never be trusted simply because someone wants it. It should be borrowed, observed, questioned, and continually earned. Today, we build organizations large enough that no hunting band could have imagined them. But somewhere, beneath suits, elections, performance reviews, and boardrooms, a much older mind is still watching, still asking the same question it asked around campfires long before history was written. Does this person deserve another day in charge? Because your world built permanent thrones.
But your brain still expects power to come with an expiration date. And somewhere deep inside, a hunter-gatherer is still quietly insulting the meat.